It's supposed to be changing. Oh well, I guess we'll just leave it on red. Okay. Still an amateur at lighting, so I have this other light here and then this other light here, and I don't know what they're called officially. So the Canon M50 was the first mirrorless camera that I bought. Before this I had a GoPro, and at the time when I was looking to get a real camera, I did a bunch of research before I bought this one. The problem was that I got a bunch of opinions. Did I say that right this time? And perspectives of this camera from like a vlogger standpoint. And I guess the reason that's a problem is because most vloggers don't usually use manual controls. They prefer to just let the camera do everything automatic so they can just worry about the content. So I'm gonna give you a few tips on the Canon M50 from a different perspective, more like a filmmaker's perspective on the 4K, the manual focus, and the best in-body profile picture. Disclaimer. First, don't let these jabronis out here tell you that the 4K doesn't work or don't use the 4K on this camera. I'm telling you right now, the 4K on the M50 is really good. People who say that it sucks or they don't use it is because they just don't know how to manual focus or they don't know how to do math. The 4K is just, like I said, the image is really good. In fact, I did a few short films with it. I'll link the most popular one somewhere on the screen here so you can check out what it looks like if you have like a 4K TV or monitor, so you can pixel peep if you want. The only thing you do have to keep in mind about the 4K though is that there is an additional crop factor. So just to make the math easier, you can just multiply whatever millimeter you have on your lens by 2.56. So 16 is the widest that I have, and that would make it on 4K with the M50 a 40mm equivalent. So you can't really get wide shots in 4K with the M50 unless you have like that 7mm wide lens from Rokinon, I think, or any other one that's that low. That would make it then a 16mm equivalent. So with that being said, it doesn't mean that the 4K sucks on the M50, it just means that you have to plan out your shots. So the 4K is definitely gonna work to your advantage if you do sit down YouTube videos, you know, like this. If you do filmmaking where you're planning the shot, it's just not gonna work for vlogging. So if you got it for vlogging, excuse me, you're more than likely never gonna be able to use it. So the first step we're gonna go over is 4K, how to manual focus in 4K, and then I'm gonna show you another focusing method that you could use that a lot of people overlook, and I don't see why more people don't use it, that ties into the slow motion in this one that you can also use. So just two things that I've never heard anybody else mention, and then that'll tie into the last one, which is the picture profile, which kind of goes more into color grading if you do that. If you do, especially if you have brown skin tones, I'll show you why this camera easily oversaturates brown skin tones and how you can probably fix that. So let's get a little bit closer so I can show you what I'm doing on the camera. All right, so first tip on here is the 4K. So right now I'm in 24 frames per second. Go to the menu, I'm gonna switch over to 4K, and you'll see that additional crop that I was talking about. The autofocus method that we're using right now is contrast-based phase detection. I don't know, something like that. It's very unreliable. You only have two options. You have single point, and then you have the face detection. They both are trash, don't use them. Except for one shot, which I'll go over in a minute here how that works. So first one you want to do is pull over to manual focus. It's the button right here on the left on your dial. And then the button that's going to help you out, that's going to be your best friend, is this right here. This is going to open up a window that's going to allow you to magnify in to see if you're in focus or not. So let's say if I'm not, you see it looks fuzzy. I just turn it. I'm turning it with my right index finger. Left index finger. You just turn it until you gain the focus. Boom, you're like that, and then hit enter, and then now you're in focus there. So that's extremely helpful. That's what I use on all of my clips or films that I use with the M50 when I use 4K, and it nails it every single time. Now, focus peaking is great. It's just that I feel like sometimes focus peaking isn't that accurate, and this one it is, because it's showing you how sharp it is or how much in focus you are. So I feel like this one is a fail-safe method. There's no way you can fail because you're looking at it, unless you're blind. You're looking at it and you just hit enter and you got it. Another tip that I will give you is that if you have a lens that has a really low aperture, try to bump it up if you can. When you're down at 1.4, you've only got 6 inches of everything that's in focus. So if you're in manual focus and you need to move around a little bit, you move out or in. If you're out of that 6 inches, you're done, you're cooked, you're hosed, you're out of focus again. So I normally bump it up to 2.8 to 3.5, and that gives me a whole lot more room of focus that I can play with to move around, so that I'm not, a lot of people think that just because you're in manual focus you have to be static. It's not true. You just have to know how much wiggle room you have. So if I'm at 2.8 to 3.5, I know I have a good healthy amount where I can sway left, right, or go in and out a little bit. So that's the manual focusing in 4K. This button right here, it's going to save your life. You can zoom in, see that you're good, and then hit record. The other one, in case, let's say you're a newbie and you don't really want to mess with the barrel too much, you could just do one-shot autofocus, which if you go over here to the camera menu, I believe it's tab 4. I already had it disabled, but it's movie servo. So servo means it's continuous. One shot means it only focuses one time. Now, I won't tell you one shot. You just have to disable servo. When you get out of here, you're gonna turn on autofocus. The tab will be on, but it won't continuously focus. So the idea here is that you half press to focus, and then you're good. That's it. Now right here is a bad example because I don't have any depth of field here, but in this one, let's say you want to focus on that, you just half press, and you have to eyeball it because the square won't turn green like it will when you're in photo mode. You have to eyeball, like, let me try get out of focus. It's not gonna work in this example. Yeah, it's not gonna work because everything, the aperture is too high, so everything's in focus. So let me turn that down. Okay, now let's try. By the way, another pro tip, if you move that box and you hold on to this button here, it'll move it back to the center. So if I half press here, you see it got a little bit out of focus. That means that it's working, because again, the autofocus on this one, the phase detection sucks. So just half press until you nail it and then let it go. And then now you don't have to worry about it moving, you're good to go. So this is more of a tip for a novice. If you're okay with manual focus, then this button again is gonna be your best friend. Another one I forgot to mention is the one shot. It's, to me, more helpful when you try to use it at the 120 frames option that you have on here. So if you move over to that one, you're gonna enable that by turning on high frame rate, like that, and you'll notice that the crop factor goes away because this is only recording in 1080p. I'm sorry, 720p. But the concept is still the same. It's still on one shot. So let's say I want to get some cool slow motion of, I don't know, let's pretend like the controller is like a squirrel. You half press till the squirrel's in focus, and you have to just eyeball it because that square is not going to turn green. Once you got it, same thing. I mean, you don't have to keep continuously moving this. You can just half press this until you get the shot in the center, and then you're good. All the slow motion with the 120 that I do, I use one shot, because with the barrel, I don't know, sometimes I think the purpose of you trying to get something in slow motion is because something is happening really fast that you want to slow down, and you probably don't have enough time to pull focus with the barrel. So one shot is probably going to be your best bet. The one shot on the 720p is actually the same autofocus you get in 1080p. It's just not servo. So this one's way more reliable. Now the one shot that you use in 4K, that one is the contrast based one. So that one's the one that might be a little fishy. So I wouldn't rely on that one too much. But if you're doing slow motion, this focus here is the same one you're using in 1080p. So this one will nail it. This one is like, gets it every single time. So that's a pro tip on that one. If you're trying to use slow motion, turn on one shot. That autofocus is very reliable. And then once you got it, you just press all the way and start recording. And the last tip we'll show you is the built-in picture profile, the best one that you can get anyway. So I'm going to switch back here to regular mode, disable. Now there's a few picture profiles people will tell you to get, Cinestyle, some that are already graded like Cinema, and I have most of those. The Cinema one's pretty cool because I don't have to grade that much. Most of the time I just upload straight out of camera if I don't have time. But let's say you do want to play around with the colors a little bit. In my opinion, the best one that already comes in the camera is neutral. I'll show you why here. If you scroll over to neutral, there, I feel like neutral gives you more details in the shadows, but it doesn't overdo it like Cinestyle does. So what I do to play with it, if you go into here, you can mess with the settings there. Now this isn't anything new. In fact, most people call this Pro Lost settings. Pro Lost is basically neutral, but you mess with it. One tip I know about this camera is that it over sharpens like a mofo, so turn that down. If you got it where it originally was, it's gonna look weird. So I think turn down all the way doesn't work either. I think you do still need to add some, so a happy middle ground is to add just one notch to the right. Down to contrast, you definitely want to bring that down. That one you can easily add in post, so that's probably what's going to get you the more details in the shadows without making it grainy. Now the saturation, this is where I don't turn that all the way down, and the reason is that I don't want to color grade too much in post. I want the camera to do most of it for me and me just add like a little tweak here and there, because the more color grading or the more stuff that you do to your footage after in post, your bit rate's going to keep getting lower and lower. Oh my god, my son just came in. Yeah, red. Okay, hey, I'm recording a YouTube video, okay? I'll go play with you in just a second. Thank you. All right, sorry about that. And so in saturation, I don't turn it up all the way to the middle, because with, like I was saying, with brown skin tones like I have, it's really easy to oversaturate, but I don't want to add too much. So I feel like the middle ground for me is leaving it just one notch to the left. And you still got really good colors, but skin tones is still a little bit more caramel. So let's say if you want to add like a LUT or anything like that, your skin tone won't get too out of control. And in this one, I always leave in the middle. I used to turn it over to the left to give myself more of a red, like a good peachy skin tone, but it doesn't ever work. But this one, I'm telling you, try this, and you'll see that it's your colors will look really good if you typically add LUTs or color grade. The reason I don't use Cinestyle, I can hear my son in the background. The reason I don't use Cinestyle is because Cinestyle, although you do get way more information, it's like almost like you're getting a lot of information you lost in the dark. I find that if you use that in low light, it like you get a whole bunch of grain, and that's just me. I mean, maybe that's not the case for you, or maybe you've used it before and you didn't get a lot of grain, but I just found that I got a lot of grain in the shadows. So the middle ground for me was neutral. So again, I have cinema, I have this other free cinema one that I got too off of a download pack. But that's pretty much it, guys. So we went over 4K magnifying glass, we went over one shot for slow motion and in 4K, and then this Pro Loss is what they call it. You can do more research on it, just look up Pro Loss and it'll probably explain it way better than I did. But that's usually the settings that I will set up under neutral, is just the way like that. Just one tab to the right on sharpness, all the way down in contrast, one tab to the left on saturation, and in the middle for color tone. The diaper? Well, this is the life of a dad YouTuber. You gotta get it in where you can get it in. Daughter just had a blowout. So anyway, that's the tips that I had for the M50. If you got any value out of it, so I would appreciate you giving this video a like. And if you have any tips, I always love to learn more about what the M50 can do, or just what other people's workflow is. Again, the neutral one I got from other people, just saying how they color grade theirs, and I tried it and it worked for me. So happy to pass along the information. If you have any tips or anything else that you want to share, or maybe that I didn't mention, you can leave it in the comments, and I would like to try it out, because I think this is the best camera at this price range. Now, although I do have an M6 and I film mostly with the M6 now, I mainly only film with it because it has uncropped 4K. If they make a second version of this with uncropped 4K, oh my God, that would be beast mode. But if you're considering a first camera, I definitely think this is the one to get. The 4K works really good. Don't let anybody tell you that it sucks. You just have to use it under certain applied settings, so like the ones I showed you. Now the cage, this is something that I got to make it feel better. So if that's one thing I could recommend, is getting a cage, whether or not you do filming or not. It just makes the camera feel better to hold. If you're going for lightness though, don't worry about the cage then. The camera is really light. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Okay, thank you, honey. I don't know, maybe you are.